Welcome to Antiwork Mondays. I'm back with your daily dose of juicy tea. Public service announcement. 20 years from now, the only people who remember that you worked late are your kids. One of my best ever managers used to say this often. He actively discouraged overwork. Our first story comes from a throwaway account. Am I the arsehole for getting angry at my employer for suggesting I give up my tips to save the restaurant? I, 24-year-old female, have been working at a small family-owned restaurant as a server for the past 3 years. I genuinely love my job, the people I work with, and the regular customers we have. Recently, the restaurant has been struggling financially due to a combination of factors, including the pandemic and increased competition in the area. Last week, the owner, who is also the head chef, held a staff meeting. He explained that the restaurant was on the verge of going under and asked if we would be willing to donate some of our tips to help keep the business afloat. He emphasised that this would be a temporary measure and that he would work out a repayment plan for everyone once the restaurant was back on stable footing. I rely on my tips to cover my living expenses and to support my younger sibling who is still in college. I'm already struggling financially, and giving up a portion of my tips would put me in an even more precarious position. I couldn't believe the owner would even suggest such a thing, and I got pretty upset during the meeting. I told him that it was outrageous to expect us to sacrifice our hard-earned money when we're all just trying to get by, and I stormed out. Later, I texted the owner to apologise for my outburst, and I offered to pick up some extra shifts or help out in other ways to support the business. He replied saying he understood my situation, but he was disappointed in my reaction. Now I've found out that several of my co-workers have agreed to give up some of their tips, and they're gossiping about me and how I overreacted. I believe I might be the arsehole because I reacted angrily in the meeting, which might have been seen as unprofessional and disrespectful towards my employer. My co-workers think I overreacted and that my anger was uncalled for. I'm worried that I might have been too harsh on my employer, who was just trying to find a solution to keep the restaurant afloat. Am I the arsehole for getting angry at my employer for suggesting that I give up my tips to save the restaurant, even though my co-workers are pitching in and think I overreacted? Yeah, you're the one being unprofessional and disrespectful. Love that he says he understands her situation, but is disappointed in her, like she's messed up and is coming to him looking for a handout, and it's not the other way around. Start looking for a new job as soon as possible. If he's begging his staff for their tips, that place is a goner. Down in the comments, my inner Gallagher makes a good point. Here's the thing, if they need a cash loan, they should go to the bank. I'm wondering if they have gone to a bank, or gone a few times, and have been turned away, so this is their only option. If that's the case, this restaurant is within weeks of closing. The next thing that's going to happen is the kitchen is going to be cut to bare bones. After that, payroll will be late for front of house, and they'll swear they'll make it up to you. Then the place will close, and that will be that. Our next story comes from AKA Fluxos Hilarious. Why do they want us back in the office? What's the real reason, other than control? My company, a global one, mandated us from fully remote work back to the office for 2 times a week. The company's going fine, good profitability, good last few quarters, good growth. I'm trying to rationalise why they're doing this and risking losing good talent. 1, do they really think it will improve productivity? 2, do they have contractual commitments keeping physical offices, like towards the government or local government, maybe to generate revenue from people going to work and spending their money downtown? Or 3, they can't accept the fact that we may be getting our jobs done in fewer hours and be sitting on our asses for the rest of the day. I too believe it's mostly about control, but it can't be only this. What is it then? Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Why do they want us back in the office so badly when everything was working so well remotely? Our next story comes from Pinjop. My colleagues think I'm strange because I want to focus on my work. I hate open offices. Open office layouts are the bane of my existence. When I come to work, I want to put on my headphones and just focus on working through my backlog of tasks. The manager understands the work we do, but for some reason being a manager has corrupted him into thinking that we work better as a team when we're all stuffed into a single room with no partitions. At the slightest inconvenience someone faces, they feel the need to broadcast this to the entire room, and there goes another 5 to 35 minutes of chatter and interruptions. Not to mention, there's much less resistance to people bugging each other for things that should be a Google search anyway. Why bother spending 30 seconds thinking when you can instantly blurt out a question to the 5 or 6 people at arm's length? The workforce stops being a group of individual contributors and becomes something much less. My colleagues are from a different generation from me and don't understand that my wearing headphones to focus isn't a personal attack on them. They feel that my wearing headphones or working from a different area of the building is that I don't like them or that I don't want to be part of the team, but it's about me wanting to focus. All the chaos and noise that an open office promotes, I assume looks and sounds impressive if you're a manager. Heat and noise equals work. But the actual output of work compared with when I can sit in a quiet room and burn through my jobs is day and night. I feel at most 30% effective when I'm in an open office, but closer to 80% when I'm by myself. The other 20% is generally email or chat interruptions. I enjoy my job and the work I do, but I enjoy it more when I'm able to focus and get through the tasks I've been assigned, or I believe I need to get done. I'm starting to suffer from action paralysis. I'm so worried about the next interruption stealing my focus, I somewhat avoid starting complex tasks and wait for the next focus-stealing interruption. Open offices, in essence, promote shallow, reactive work. No offense, I'm all for talking to colleagues about their kids, animals, or holiday plans after work at the pub, but not at the expense of getting my work done and leaving on time. My plan going forward will be to stick to finding refuge in some of our spare empty offices and mixing that in with a bit of social time in the office. Open offices really are a failed experiment for some lines of work. I really don't get the whole open office setup. It's like managers think that a good functioning team needs to collaborate constantly, but really most collaboration can be done by email, and most of the actual work is done individually. Noisy offices with constant interruptions make it so hard to focus and get stuff done. OP is like the ultimate worker. They just want to focus and do the work. But I bet the manager doesn't see the work being produced and just sees OP as not being a team player. I kind of wonder if managers like open offices because they think people will just be on their phones if they're not being constantly watched. What do you guys think? Down in the comments, SF5852 says, an engineer where I worked had a piece of crime scene tape attached to his cubicle that he could pin across the opening. Hanging from the tape was a sign that read, "No." Oh, I want to do this. Our next story, posted by Deleted. A little light reading. About 10 years ago or so, I started a new job which was quite technical, with a lot of technical reference documents that are updated regularly. My manager was the type of guy who'd expect his staff to work a little bit extra each day and make snide comments about you if you had the audacity to leave work on time. Company policy states that if we did work overtime, we had to submit it within 30 days or it would be denied. He loved being the bearer of bad news if someone missed that deadline. And all overtime had to be approved prior by management. Anyway, at my yearly review, he mentioned it wouldn't hurt if I took home a document or two to read over the weekends, confirming just an hour a night of light reading would be quite beneficial. He even noted this as a developmental opportunity in my review, so I followed his recommendation and would read for an hour each night before bed. He took pleasure in reminding me about it in front of co-workers and smugly praising me for finally listening to him. Then just before the 30-day deadline, I submitted my overtime of 1 hour each night, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, for the last 4 weeks. He was furious, but knew there was nothing he could do about it, as it was documented in my review, and I was directed to do my reading during business hours after that. The kicker, company policy also states overtime not merged with my normal work hours is paid at a minimum of 4 hours pay at overtime rates, meaning I got 7 hours pay for every hour I read each night. Quite lucrative in the end. And our next story comes from Willy Billy. In a meeting, I told my boss that my workload was too large. He responded by adding more workload. I resigned as he said that. I was a construction manager for a very high-end construction company in Asheville. For a year, I'd been telling my boss, the VP in charge of my division, that my workload was too large. That's not good because it means delays and mistakes. A workload too large for the construction manager is catastrophic to the construction company, but also to the client, subcontractors and designers, real estate agents, banks, etc. I told him in person, in writing, multiple times. After several months of not getting results, I reached out to the company president over the phone and said the same. That yielded no result. The day I resigned, I was in my weekly meeting with my boss, where the theme over the past year has become, my workload is too large and it will backfire on us soon. My boss smiled and said, well, get ready, because we're going to add 2 more projects to your plate, and we will not be able to give you any extra help. I said, okay then, I'm resigning. Cue shock Pikachu face. I've never seen a faster display of how unqualified a person was for their role. Boy, I thought my boss was unqualified before, but he proved it over the next 2 weeks. 2 months later, and they're struggling to get my Cobra and my 401k match. I just wanted to succeed, but my boss didn't know how to make it happen. Damn, I can relate to this one. An employee struggling under too much workload? Better add more. Who wants to bet that they didn't replace you either? Just shoved your workload onto someone else. And shock, they quit from overwork too. No way. Down in the comments, Mr. Twister says, I watched a very promising career take the other path in your exact circumstances. It ended in a complete disaster for the whole company, and the project literally burnt to the ground. A project manager who was overworked had a multi-million-dollar job and 2 others under his eye. When the burnout started affecting him, he was told to bury the bitching. He ended up having a mental breakdown, and a 100-unit elderly care facility newly built went up in flames. That was the beginning of the end for the whole company. 70 families were disrupted by the inevitable collapse. Our last story comes from Lila. You mean all our patients don't have seizures? My bad. Once, I worked for this lady who owned a home health agency, and I was running it for her. At first, it was not that bad. Margaret liked me and had me doing a lot of things that were maybe above my pay grade, but I didn't mind so much because I was learning a lot and it didn't involve any direct patient care. In 2014, when I first started, she had an LVN named Nina. She and I got on quite well, and we were good work buddies. Sometimes patients would go into her office and she'd shut the door. I don't know why she bothered to do that when it was obvious that she was admitting them. I wasn't exactly comfortable with that because you're supposed to be an RN, but at least she was a nurse. After 2015 though, Margaret decided to put Nina out into the field, so I was the only one in the office. Shortly after that happened, Margaret caught me on a break and said, Hey, I need you to do me a favour. There's a patient in your office. I need you to take his vitals, write down all his meds, and put him into the system. I said, Margaret, are you actually trying to get me to admit this guy? That is so far out of my scope of practice, I would lose my massage license, and maybe even go to jail. Oh, come on, you know you can do it. You have the knowledge and the experience. I said, you can try and flatter me all you want, but I'm not doing it. You're an RN. Why don't you do it so that no one gets in trouble with the state? She said, okay, I'll give you a $50 bonus for every one of those you do. I said, really? $50? Wow, okay then, I'm in. I asked her how exactly I was to come up with the diagnosis though, with no MD report. She said to just Google the meds and see what they're prescribed for and get a diagnosis from that. That is so illegal, I almost called my mum to ask her to put money in my commissary. So anyway, I did end up doing it that one time. But I knew I had to outsmart her for ethics' sake, or I'd been stuck doing those for the rest of eternity, and probably end up with legal problems for $50 a pop. I had to do something, but I just wasn't sure what that was yet. Finally, I decided to deliberately make an error. The patient said he was on gabapentin. I know what that is, and I also know why it's prescribed. It could be for multiple reasons, usually pain or anxiety, so I put down seizure disorder, the rarest problem it's prescribed for. When Margaret saw what I'd put in, she started yelling at me. You know that's for neuropathy? I said, well actually I don't know that. There are a bunch of users for gabapentin, and seizure codes pay more than neuropathy ones, don't they? According to the coding guide they do, and I know how important it is for you to make more money, right? And guess what? You know, I noticed that more than half our patients are taking that, so I went back and changed the diagnosis to say seizure disorder and exported all the corrected assessments to the state already. Aren't you proud of me? Of course, I did nothing of the sort. She literally lost her wig and screamed, do you have any idea how many ADRs I'm going to have to get? It will take forever. I'll have to get someone to scan every last one of those records and submit them to Medicare. Meanwhile, they won't pay me. I shrugged and said, well, I'll probably estimate around 50 if the numbers add up. Okay, she screamed, that's it. I'll never ask you to do that again, and give me back that $50. Really? I said, oh no, are you sure? Oof, wow, I'm so sorry. I messed up, my bad. I know she saw me laughing at her as I walked away. There are cameras everywhere after all. Remember, I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.